Hello, uh, how are you doing, Kenyans? Today, I want to talk about something serious concerning our economy. Now, today, I want us to talk about leasing of public companies. It is confusing among the citizens of our republic to understand the term leasing. So today, I just want to talk about leasing and help Kenyans understand the difference between leasing and privatization of companies. Now, when we talk about privatization of companies, this means that the government sells all its shares to private investors, thereby making a public limited company become a private limited company, thus unable to sell its shares on the stock exchange market. So that means it has to sell to selective private investors, but not to the members of the public. In that case, the company will no longer advertise its shares to the members of the public. In that scenario, that means the company will lose all its ownership back to the private investor who has purchased the company or who has purchased all the shares. Now, back to leasing. According to our constitution, leasing is not a guarantee of total ownership of the property. You only own a property for a given period of time. So when it is said that the government has leased its property, maybe a piece of land for a period of 10 years, then it means the ownership of the property is in the hands of the leaser for that particular period only. And then immediately after the end of that particular period, whoever has been owning the property has to return the property back to the original owner in the state it was, as agreed on in the agreement upon leasing. Now, what are some of the reasons that will make the government lease out its property? We have cases in Kenya where the government has decided to lease out the sugar industries, the sugar companies. That is, we start with Nzoia Sugar Company, we have Chimili, and all those other companies that exist in Kenya. Why does the government do so? Sometimes, some years back, during Uhuru's government, you might realize that there are times when Uhuru could send 2.4 billion Kenya shillings to Mumia Sugar Company to revive it. The money could be sent in the company this month. Next month, the company is not working. He again sends other amounts of money to the same company, trying to revive the company, but to no avail. The company cannot revive. So when the government decides to lease out its property, sometimes it is because of the burden that the company has subjected the government to. The taxpayers' money has been subjected to so many burdens, so that the money people are giving out as tax, immediately after it has been collected, instead of doing some development in the country, it is being taken to revive a company owned by the government due to some mismanagement of financial resources in those particular companies. So then the government may decide to lease out its companies or its properties because of one, to reduce the burden on the taxpayers. the money that has been spent to revive these companies now reduces. Number two is to raise revenue to the government. You know, when they lease out the company, in return, whoever is leasing the company will have to give a substantial amount of money to the government. And this means that the government now has some finances to keep on its budget going. So then the government will have some finances to run its operations. That means development will take place, construction of roads can take place, hospitals can have medicines, and all other development programs in the country can take place. Number three, the government can lease out its own property so that it reduces its control in the economy. You know, every now and then we listen to the government, through parliament, discussing these government agencies, these government banks, these government companies. So sometimes the government may decide to lease out its property so that it reduces its control. Because sometimes you might realize that if the government comes in too much, it will scare out some other investors, potential investors, who will have otherwise made the economy grow in a positive way. So now, the reason as to why the government might decide to lease some companies is because it wants to reduce its control. But put in mind that we have some essential services offered by some essential companies that cannot be leased out. For instance, water supply system in the country cannot be leased out to private investors because water is very essential. So then that one cannot be left in the hands of private investors. The sale of firearms is very essential, is very critical. It cannot be left to private investors. So that is the work of the government to do that. We have some other critical things, like for example, construction of roads. It is something that is done by the government. It has to give private contractors, but it is under the control of the government. So then up to that point, I think you understand why, to this extent, there's a debate in the country about the leasing of these public companies. To me, in fact, I say it is a good move. No, if it were that they wanted to privatize these public companies, I would have said, why could you try leasing before you go for privatization? If then leasing will not be able to solve the problems that our companies are going through, then we can now just privatize them all, because these companies are a total burden to the government. For sure, as a citizen who love my country, I know the pain the government goes through financing projects that have no fruits at all. Other companies, other countries have private companies that are making profit. If at all they are going to lease out these companies, you realize that these private companies are going to get, sorry, not private companies, these companies have been leased to private investors. And if somebody owns a property in private ownership, this person will take no nonsense. He'll have to ensure that he makes profit. So these entities are going to be after profit. And so if they make a lot of profit, that means the government is also going to get a lot of revenue through tax collection. Because if you look at the taxation system in our country, is that the more you make profit, the more you pay tax. So the government is still going to get some advantages by leasing out the, the factories. Even though we have some setbacks, we have some disadvantages of leasing out. But then, I come to our local politicians who are just cloud chasing, who are just after posting TikTok videos. They just want to be seen, holding, uh, you know, they just want to be seen opposing the government every now and then. They don't have an idea of how to revive these companies. If somebody comes and tells you that Nzoia Sugar Company's nuclear has been leased at 50,000 per acreage, is that realistic? Really? Let me just call out one politician, Malala. Are you realistic? So let's just talk about realistic information. Don't give out false information. In real world, currently, there's no piece of land going at 50,000 per acreage. That is wrong and that is not correct information. Two, we have some politicians who are claiming the government is selling out the property. If it sells out the properties that is belonging to these particular factories, you are saying that the government wants to sell, ancestral land. How do I benefit from that ancestral land? If currently I don't have a piece of land, can I go and stay in the factory, in the nuclear? Do I own the piece of land, even if it is an ancestral? So if it is sold, how has it been benefiting me? There's no benefit I get at all, because of the factory being in our county, because of the factory or the company being in my region. So even if it is sold out, there's no benefit I get. So it is better it is sold out so that I, as a local farmer, can take the sugarcane to this particular factory and be paid on time. We've been suffering as farmers. I remember there's a time when we were taking our sugarcane to Mumia Sugar Company. We used to take more than 3 to 6 months for us to be paid. You've supplied your sugarcane, Mumias has taken your sugarcane. You don't know if the information that are given you is correct or not. When they are taking the sugarcane to the factory, nobody accompanies the tractors to go and confirm the weight of your sugarcane. But then you are waiting for almost 6 months for you to be paid. How sure are you that there's no manipulation of the figures to be paid in between the period? But now, if they lease out these particular properties to the private investors, we are guaranteed that within 1 to 2 weeks, you are paid. So at least in that particular period, there's no much manipulation of the figures. And also, the government has entered into agreement that before you take our property as a private leaser, you must pay the farmers who are claiming payment from the factory because of the supply they made. Up to now, they have not been paid. So then it means this has to be adhered to. And so many other things that I might not be able to talk about. So Kenyans, let not be those people who oppose everything. Let's love our nation. and protect our nation.